The Agriculture Summit Africa 2024 organizers say the focus is to tackle food insecurity across the continent. According to them, the event, billed to take place on November 11th to 12th, 2024 in Abuja, would bring together delegates from 30 countries to craft actionable plans for transforming Africa's agricultural sector into a multi-trillion-dollar powerhouse. This summit is themed Transitioning from Scarcity to Security, and it comes at a critical time as Africa grapples with unprecedented food inflation and supply chain disruptions. And joining me in the studio is the group head at Greek and Solid Minerals Finance Sterling Bank. It's good to have you join us, Dr. Olushola Obikoye.
Obikoye, you got it right. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's good to have you join us. Very interesting topic, and I think it's really critical that we have a conference like this, a summit like this, right? We had on a show the previous, that was on Monday, a farmer now talking about how important it is for the private sector to collaborate with the government, right, and bring up actionable plans. You know, just like you said, that this a conference would address some of these actionable plans. But first off, talk to us about what Agricultural Summit in Africa is about.
Okay, so the Agriculture Summit Africa is an advocacy of Sterling Bank Limited that was initiated some 7 years ago. This year we are in our 7th edition to bring together stakeholders across the agricultural sector and related stakeholder sectors to address issues that will to look at issues that will address the current challenges that we have in the African agricultural sector, and more important, to provide solutions to them. So the last 7 years has witnessed a very robust convergence of stakeholders, industry players, policymakers, private sector participants, and of course, those that are at the base of the pyramid, all across board, converging at some event or the venue or the other, just to address the issues that, should I use the word, bedevil the agriculture sector? And
there are a couple of them.
There are quite a number of them. And of course, begin to now provide solutions for them. I think over time, since the last 7 years, the Agriculture Summit Africa, powered by Sterling, has garnered a brand presence of its own, now that the reputation is out there as the summit or the advocacy that drives very, very decisively, not just issues that we confront boldly. Some of these issues, some people will not want to talk about them, but we will need to come and talk about them. But a little beyond that, fashion out actionable steps. And I think outcomes from these particular events in the last years had been adopted by policymakers or even private sector participants in their progress template. So it's a really important part and a really important member of the African agricultural community. That's the Agriculture Summit Africa.
Very interesting. But this year you decided to pick transitioning from scarcity to security as this year's summit theme. One would wonder why. Of course, we know that the hunger pyramid seems to be deepening. You have a lot of persons still, you know, at that bottom of the pyramid, trying to see how they can get 3 square meals per day. Not just the farmers now who are struggling with climate factors, you know, for their agriculture produce, right? You also have people, households who are finding it difficult to actually make ends meet. How apt is this theme, transitioning from scarcity and security? Apart from the conversation, how do you, translate this theme into actionable plans?
Okay, so this theme for this year was inspired by what is happening all across Africa, but more importantly in Nigeria. And taking Nigeria as a case study, you would agree with me that in its first 100 years in office, this current government declared an emergency on food security. This will underscore the fact that long before now, we have seen our production output on a steady declining basis. We have had scenarios where climate issues, unimproved seeds, dearth of best agricultural practices, lack of information, capacity building, and of course access to finance. They have at all points
also.
Insecurity, absolutely. They have at some point or the other kind of contributed to the scarcity that had come to perpetuate itself on our landscape. And it is not just on Nigeria, like I said, across sub-Saharan Africa, we are commonly denominated by these factors, and therefore the issue of food scarcity is a clear and present problem. And we know that food security is national security. The government, the private sector, and every other stakeholder in the economy must come together and provide solutions for it. So the theme transitioning from scarcity to security speaks so much to not just the cause of food scarcity, but why is it that, let's put it this way, it speaks so much to not just scarcity, it goes on to speak to how to achieve sufficiency when there is a very stable climb for security. So we have a scenario where, again in Nigeria,
it's our home, of course.
We've had a scenario, we've had various scenarios where there had been issues of banditry, there had been internally displaced persons because of the social unrest, and all of these have gone on to exacerbate our output, our production. And because of that, what we have tried to do differently as a nation, especially with the efforts of the government and the private sector, is to try to create social safety nets, right? A social safety net will then help to provide the palliatives that we have always known. All of these are short-term measures. But the theme of this year's conference, summit, seeks to address not just the factors that are aggravating food insecurity, but also to provide solutions and indeed a roadmap to ensure that we come from scarcity into surplus, into abundance on a sustainable basis. So if there's any time to talk about this, I think it is now, not just in Nigeria, but also in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, if you go around Africa, you will understand how significant food inflation had become, like I said, by some factors that are commonly denominated among the African countries.
But that brings us to the question of how cross-border collaborations would help in addressing food scarcity challenges we're currently facing on the continent.
So, well, I've always loved to see it this way. Africa is a unique continent that is nearly monolithic in outlook. I believe that most of the boundaries or the lines that we see across the various nations are so superficial. I said where, but I think it is still clear that they are so superficial, drawn by the colonial regimes and all. Those days, there's a very thin line between Nigeria and Cameroon, as there will be a thin line between Togo and Ghana, for example. And we have seen our trade corridors demarcated by all kinds of internal policies from various countries, creating a trade corridor, a trade channel, the type that would help project the seamless flow of, should I call it food trade or general trade, right? Seamless flow of trade activities is the way to go. So we talk about the ECOWAS protocol, for example. We know that the ECOWAS trade corridor provides the opportunity for African countries to be able to, trade amongst themselves along certain protocols that will not that has removed impediments, right? Without any, so we've had seamless trades with the West African countries. That was ECOWAS. For the after African Free Continental Trade area, the story or the picture becomes bigger. Now, what that seeks to do is to also bring out in a very clear and unambiguous manner how Africa can trade with little or no barrier, how we can entwine our supply chain management system, in such a manner that where you have food surplus, you will be able to transfer or move commodities from places of surplus to places of scarcity, irrespective of where in the continent it is. It will help us a lot in growing very robustly in our economy, but more importantly, it will help with our food security issues. There are areas that are abundant in production, and there are some areas that are struggling with scarcity. So with the AFTA protocol, the ECOWAS trade agreement, we see a scenario where seamless trade and by consequence, seamless movement of food, will go from country to country, irrespective of what government is in. So that is precisely what we want to address at this year's summit. We will be looking very critically at an update, a progress report on how far we have gone with AFTA.
Because it's 7 years now.
It's 7 years. And
for the conference, of course. So it's good that you're able to assess how far you've gone with the conference, with the summit, particularly some of the policies you've railed out at the end of the summit.
Absolutely.
Now, this is the 7th year. Can you share specific ways the bank is supporting farmers? I'm very interested in that, because it's not just about really now policies and policy statements,
Absolutely.
right? But what are you doing to help farmers and agribusinesses to enhance food security?
Thank you very much. The last, a little over a decade ago, when Sterling Bank decided to put in a direct focus on the agricultural sector, we came in at a point where it was not fashionable for commercial banks in Nigeria to engage the agricultural sector. And we are quite convinced that the sector that engages the quantum, the predominant number of its people, is that sector that will lead that country to winning ways, economically speaking. And that sector happens to be agriculture. Agriculture employs 60% of our population in Nigeria, and it is a contributor to about 25% of our national GDP. But then we are largely agrarian. That will mean that we have a lot of value chain players in the agriculture sector that apply at the medium, micro, small, and medium scale. Many of these people have what the bankers will call high-risk metrics. Because of that, they would not want to really extend the kind of facility that they need to be able to go on. But what we have done in Sterling is to engage the entire sector, to understudy exactly what the needs are, and we have identified all of the challenges. 3 of the challenges we identified was, number 1, the lack of capacity. In other words, so many people are doing so many things as inefficiently as they had always done it. There are no modern way practices, on how to go about the business of agriculture. And so we have issues with that. And then we have issues with market access. Our supply chain managements are quite fragmented at this time. And you will agree with me that with the kind of losses that we achieve with our foodstuff, I'm sure you have heard about how our veggies go to waste, about 60% of them. Some other crops, a minimum of 40%. All of these are just an issue with lack of access to market, right? I mean, they are not able to get that particular access to market. Storage facilities, supply chain management, logistics, infrastructural decay, all of these have actually contributed to that. And then, of course, we can talk about access to finance. So it is not about just throwing money or funds in the way of the farmers. It is about making sure that they are quite capacitated, well-trained to be able to engage the market with the produce that they are bringing out, and then they are robustly supported by the banks. We looked at this in Sterling, and we came up with bespoke solutions, products that addresses the MSMEs. For example, Sterling Bank is into partnership with a development partner, with a development partner who has given us some funds that we have been able to blend. And with this particular blending, we were able to come up with a 9% single-digit interest rate facility I think that it is quite unique in an ambience where the average interest rate right now is at 36% per annum or so. So we have that for them. So far, we've been able to engage over 120,000 smallholder farmers. And it has had some ripple effect over, and when I say ripple effect, indirect impact, over some 3 million people who work in that ecosystem. And we continue to create products that ensures that they have access to finance, but not just that, they are able to sort their supply chain issues. And of course, the issues around capacity building were also robustly involved. So we have quite an array of bespoke products that I am not too sure if I will have that time to.
You're using to engage farmers,
Absolutely.
but, and also, I just wanted to ask, for this Agriculture Summit Africa, right, what makes it unique this year? And what should participants really be looking forward to? Is it for us journalists or, just for the agriculture sector?
So one of the things that the Agriculture Summit Africa has distinguished itself in is the fact that it is not just another talk shop. Like I said, we are in our 7th edition. This year will make the 7th. And what we have always done is come up with communiques and come up with a framework for actionable steps. And these steps are then disseminated to the relevant stakeholders for their necessary actions. Last year, we had an agro-pitch event. And our thinking at that point was that we could always look at the people that have been attending, young people who are into agriculture. We invited them for an agro-pitch event for an opportunity to win up to 50 million for their startup project. It's been a year, and I think it's time for us to come and give the report. They will be at that event. But more importantly, this year's summit will bring together very critical stakeholders that have a direct correlation to food security policy in Africa. There will be participation. People will be participating from some 33 countries in Africa. And we have resource people coming from about 4 countries, amongst other experts in Nigeria. By the end of that summit, we will come up with an actionable framework that will provide a roadmap on how to transition from scarcity to sustainable food security. So this year's own will be more of action, something that we will put in the public space for tracking. So we look forward with excitement to this particular summit that is coming up next week because it promises to be a very impactful one and the type that will give us or commit into our hands a template that stakeholders like policymakers, private sector practitioners, industry players can adopt to be able to meander or to find our way out of our current quagmire of insecurity to security.
I'm personally looking forward to that summit because I'm looking forward to networking with some of these other African countries that will be at the summit. Group Head, Agric and Solid Minerals Finance, Sterling Bank, Dr. Olushola Obikoye. Thank you so much for joining us in Business Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.